Hey, hey, hey. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, no matter where you are in your part of the world. Welcome to Earth's #1 psychic radio network. That's right. You're here on Moonstruck TV. You're right here on the A1R Psychic Radio Network. Well, it's time once again for the Spirit Phoenix Rising Show. I'm Renee, Lynn. I'm your host. And as you can see, I like Halloween. I like the traditions of Halloween. I enjoy the costumes of Halloween. And I really enjoy the weirdness of Halloween. And speaking of things strange and weird, I wanted to bring on a guest who's written about some really weird stuff. I wanted to bring you a guest who has talked about some really, really weird stuff. I want you to welcome, you guys, a friend of mine who is the host of Radio Mysterioso, very mysterious, and the co-author of the book, Weird California. Can I bring on my dear friend, Greg Bishop, to talk to us about weird Halloween? Hey, Greg.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going weird and wonderful over here. I'm having a good time. Everyone on my street has decorated. I have decorated.
I forgot to turn on I got some lights like yours, except they go on the ceiling.
Oh, well,
I was so jealous of your beautiful laser light show. I had to get my own.
You know, if I could, I would live at Laserium, just put on a Pink Floyd album and leave me alone for a couple hours.
Yeah, that's how they started out, I think, was Dark Side of the Moon Laserium. Yep, yeah.
It gives us all something to do and keeps us off the streets. And everyone's off the streets this year pretty much for trick or treat, huh? Gosh.
Yeah, nobody's going out. I mean, our neighborhood, there aren't any kids. And it's funny because kids will their parents will drive them in from other neighborhoods to trick or treat in our neighborhood. And it's apartments. So it's kind of crazy. So yeah, I don't think they're going to do it this year though.
Well, they're having a lot of trunk or treat, the idea of driving to a common area, pulling into a parking lot, and the kids going from car to car or driving through. It's that's spooky and weird in itself, don't you think?
Yeah, I hope they've invented like candy shooting guns, like you use when you put change in the toll booth, except for candy. Here's some candy, kids. Watch your eyes.
Right. It's just like, you have to get an NRA membership or something to actually.
Yeah, exactly. Gun candy stuff. Candy gun safety.
Candy gun safety. Well, as I was mentioning, I wanted to discuss some of the, weird and spooky traditions, maybe around Halloween, and also get into a bit of your writing and your experiences of being a host on a radio show that really focuses on the paranormal and just odd and strange happenings out there. I mean, how'd you get started with all that? Share that with us.
I really don't know, Renee, except when I was a kid, weird. I went to the library because my dad took us to the library every week and said, get 3 or 4 books. You finish them and we'll come back next week. And I went to the 000 sections, the first one you come to, and guess what's in that section? Paranormal, UFO. And so I just started reading all those books when I was a kid, when I was, 5. And I read all those books. Then we went to another library and I read all the books there that weren't in the first library. So for some reason, I've been interested in it since I was little and been writing about it for, 25 or 30 years.
Oh, gosh. So, yeah, a lot of kids when they're younger don't get into what we enjoyed growing up. Like while other people were playing with Barbie, I would rather sit inside and watch Leonard Nimoy's In Search Of and see what was going on. Yeah, right. It's just like the crystal skulls and Mayan calendars and just all this mystical weirdness. I dug that.
Yeah, I watched those. I watched the UFO show. The one, what was it called? Project UFO. The one that was based on the files of the Air Force's Project Blue Book. I don't think they actually said that, but that's what it was based on. I actually went to the UCLA library to the Jack Webb collection because he was the producer and creator of that show. Jack Webb from Dragnet.
From Dragnet,
yeah.
Of course.
He was a huge UFO fanatic. Who knew?
I think you and I are actually dating ourselves right now with all of these references, but I think we have a lot of listeners.
People should know. And anyway, there's an entire library, entire archive there of all of his stuff. A lot of it's UFO stuff, and a lot of it was the actual Air Force Blue Book stuff. Hundreds and hundreds of cases, like all in these files, and then all the scripts from all the shows were in there too. It was pretty amazing to go down there, and you have to request it. It takes like a day for them to go get it from somewhere else. But yeah, I got to look at all those scripts from those old UFO shows and all these the copy of all the Air Force's UFO reports, like from the 50s and 60s. It was kind of amazing.
Wow. And it's just like, amongst our groups of friends and the people we talk to, there's so many people with, just odd experiences and odd stories, like last week I was talking to Susan Demener, who wrote Cosmic Witch, right? And she's sharing with us her initiation story that involved a UFO story. So it's, it's certainly out there. And I think more and more people are becoming receptive to the ideas of
you will see something or experience something, and that changes your life. It's the same. It hasn't happened to me. I've seen a couple of things, maybe. One was very weird. A thing that looked like a wheel with no, what was it? It looked, it wasn't a wheel. It was like an 8-pointed pure black star-shaped thing in broad daylight. I saw it floating in the air. I don't know what it was, but I was already into it, so it was so weird for me to see that. And then I didn't even go over and look at it. There's this thing that happens to people where they go, well, okay, I guess that's pretty weird, and they leave, which is exactly what happened to me, because I think your brain just kind of shuts off and goes, and it just kind of just shuts down because it has nowhere to put that weird experience. But, it does affect you, especially, if I never cared about this stuff, I might have had a different reaction. But I find that talking to people who've been on my show, there's like a lot of times there's like an event that made them interested in this stuff, and because they want to get an answer for themselves. And as it turns out, the answers for all of these things tend to be pretty individualistic. You can't apply an answer to everybody for some of this weird stuff. Just like, if you do a tarot reading, you can't do a tarot. It's all the same archetypes, but they're going to affect people and be more significant to people in different ways. And you can't pull that experience across, but everybody knows what a tarot card reading is, and everybody knows what a UFO sighting is, and everybody knows, but or a Bigfoot or a ghost or whatever, but actually having that experience is way different than talking about it.
We all relate to it then in a different way. It's interesting, your story with the 8-pointed star, it's like, in a lot of occult practices, the 8-pointed star might point to chaos magic. It might point to the Star of Ishtar. The number 8 is such an auspicious number onto itself, right? Through Hinduism, and 8 to the 64, or the
Dharma wheel has eight spokes on it.
Yeah, so it's just really interesting, and there's a lot to unpack there in a personal experience. And I was thinking today, too, about the jack-o'-lantern and its history. And there's, a lot of talk about the will-o'-wisp and, jack-o'-lanterns coming from sort of the idea of vegetation that might be going through, like decomposing and whatnot, and spontaneously combusting, swamp gas.
Yes. Yeah, we thought we said we were going to talk about, mysterious lights, spook lights, and things like that. And it's funny, there's not too many in California. There's a bunch in the Midwest. They tend to cluster in like the South and the Midwest, at least the places, or Texas, the Marfa lights are pretty famous for that.
I went there. Have you been to Marfa?
No, I haven't.
Now there is an outpost of the weird and strange, for sure. Lots of artists, etc. I have a friend who's got an art installation out there that spooks and mystifies all sorts of people, but it was inspired by the Marfa lights. And maybe for people who are listening that don't understand what a spook light is, can you elaborate a bit for us?
They're lights that appear at certain places and have appeared there. And because people say the lights, it's car headlights. No, apparently if you go back and look in records, they were there before cars. It might be cars now, but they weren't always, cars weren't always there. But there are these lights that appear in certain locations. There's some in Missouri, Oklahoma. God, where are the other ones?
Saskatchewan, I think has.
Yeah. And they tend to be in the same place, and they just show up almost at random times. I think they're more prevalent in the summer. But that might because more people are out looking for them in the summer because it's not cold. And people have explained them from everything. The popular explanation is it's ghosts, or there was a wreck here on the highway and those are the ghosts of the people that were there, or some children were lost in the woods and those are their spirits floating through the woods. But then there's also, like you said, there could be rotting vegetable matter. That could be a spook light. Although in Marfa, there isn't any rotting vegetable matter. It's basically in a dry desert area. So that's a different thing. Or, earth energy. I'm not talking about like a spiritual energy, but actual energy, like created when you put rocks under strain. Sometimes plasma is created out of that. And so, that's where earthquake lights come from. I saw earthquake lights, I think, during the Northwich earthquake. And I don't think it was power stations going out, because it was long after all the lights went out. So I have no idea. And people said they saw them outside of LA too, like up in the mountains. So, that an earthquake might release that kind of energy too. So there's all kinds of different explanations. If you talk to me for any amount of time, which you have, I'm always interested in every possible explanation, from the completely strange to the completely mundane. And, I don't know where these things fall along that spectrum. It's probably different for each locality. But I did do a lecture recently called "It Exists, What Do We Do About It?" And it's kind of like, we must accept that a lot of this weird stuff does actually happen to people, and it does have a source. I don't know what it is, but that we have to treat it as seriously as a human experience. These things are human experiences, and to tell people they didn't see what they did, or to belittle it is wrong, because you won't find anything out. The more somebody can open up, the more, the important part, they feel better about their experience because they get to tell it to somebody that's not laughing at them. Right. And two, you might learn something from them, and the data on it gets a little bit better because people aren't reticent. Because there's things they would say about their feelings or what happened later, or how their lives were affected by any weird experience. That's valuable data, and it also helps them, and it helps other people that have had that experience. You see two people that have had a weird experience, UFOs, ghosts, Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster, whatever you want to call it, and when they talk to each other, they know what they're talking about, even though they haven't had the same experience. They both know they've been through something. And that's fascinating to me. And you cannot reproduce that. You can't reproduce that on demand for people, which is why science has a problem with it. It's experiential, but it's there. So, what do we do about it?
Well, I'm all for empirical evidence. I'm all for being able to take a certain set of, structured elements and put a boundary around it and be able to repeat it. But I think so many times we are so quick to discard testimony. But if we've got 1,000 people sharing a similar experience, we can't just sweep that under the rug. I mean, there's something there. And as a spiritual person, I've always, lived by a tenet that where, attention goes, consciousness flows. So do you feel
energy into something, and it starts to balance things in a way that you are thinking. I mean, I think that's the way things work. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh, well, no. I was going to ask, you interview so many people who have had these extraordinary experiences. Do you feel that it is amplified by people wanting it, seeking it out, drawing it out? Do you think there are greater numbers of that occurring versus something spontaneously happening for somebody who's not expecting it?
Yeah, well, if somebody wants something really badly, I would suspect, and people are going to hate me for this, but it seems like you're primed to expect anything and everything that's not readily strange will become strange to you because you want to see it. I've seen this happen. I've been out looking, been on UFO watches, and people are saying, "What's that?" I know it's a plane. And they say, "How do you know it's a plane?" It's like, well, one, I have a pilot's license, and two, it's got a red and a green and a white light, and the red light is blinking, and there's a red light on the left side and a green light on the right side. That means it's a plane. And people get angry with me for it. But then again, people go out there and see lights zipping around and doing things that no plane can do, and nothing we know nothing we know of really can do those kind of things. So, the evidence, it just, you have to take it on a case-by-case basis. And I think I'm more interested in people that never had any interest in this stuff whatsoever, and suddenly it just smacks them in the face. Because that, to me, is just kind of like, they didn't expect it, they didn't have a preconception, and to me, that experience is more pure because they're not kind of steeped in a mythology. I'll tell you why. Because I'm not saying mythology doesn't work, but steeped in a subject. Like, I'm very fascinated to read first encounters with anybody, with anything, because nobody knows what they're talking about yet, so there's no preconceptions. Like the first anthropologist that went out to talk to the Zuni. He was the first person that, Frank Hamilton Cushing, he was the first person that went out there that didn't want anything out of them. That he didn't want their land, he didn't want to take, he didn't want to enslave them, wasn't looking for gold, he just wanted to ask them what their lives were like. And it took a while to get their confidence, but once he did, he got to experience all kinds of things that, nobody who didn't ask in the way he did could have experienced. And in that way, he got a pure experience, and I think he got more pure information because there was neither side was trying to, impose whatever their culture was on the other one or their ideas about the other one. He was totally open, and I think they were totally open because they accepted him into the tribe, and he actually joined one of the medicine societies. There's a picture of him dressed up as for a ceremony I've got somewhere in one of his books. It's fascinating to me. But the point is here that I think that the things that really interest me, the experiences that really interest me, are people that just never expected it. And when I go out and do these kind of things, I've gone on ghost hunts and all that. I try to put myself in a mindset that nothing may happen or something may happen, but I'm just going to accept what happens and just be open to it. And that's all I think. I don't think, where's the ghost or whatever. And I have had some weird stuff happen on ghost hunts, like kind of creepy things. I'm not a ghost hunter, but I've got friends that do it. So I've been on a couple, and one, nothing happened. And the other one, all kinds of things happened, cold spots and chills and, communication through the, that spirit box thing with the radio. And
the REM pods. We used a REM pod, and we used it like an on-off thing. We had somebody we thought was our friend, and the REM pod is not supposed to go on or off, the little lights. Yes.
A red and a blue light. The red one is when temperature's going up, and the blue one's when it's going down. And the blue light just kept coming on, and my friend said once for yes and two for no, and the light would blink and answer to his questions, and it's not supposed to do that. Wow. And I told him to turn off the REM pod twice to reset it, to make sure, and it kept doing it.
Oh, my goodness. Now, I don't know if you remember, a few years back, there was a film called White Noise with Michael Keaton.
I know about that. It was about EVP, right?
About EVP. And this was back at the time that I was very, very, very skeptical about EVP. This was before they had so many of the paranormal shows on the television and whatnot. And I was sent by a sci-fi magazine and website run by a friend of mine to go cover the premiere of this. And there were people there from an electronic voice phenomenon, group,
research group, or
advocacy group, yes, etc. So, of course, I had my little digital recorder along to do my little bit of journalism for the evening. And they took us up to the Carol Lombard suite, which is notorious at the Roosevelt Hotel. That's where the event was. One of the haunted locations, supposedly, in Hollywood. And this is supposed to be one of the most active rooms of the hotel. So actually, my husband was with me. We had gotten separated, but we had noticed on the way up that people who had their camera setups, etc., batteries were being drained and whatnot. But once we were in the suite, I couldn't find him. And I ran around the corner in this very large hotel suite and found him by this like wet bar by a window, and no one else was in there but him. And he was saying while the recorder's going, you know, I figure if there's nobody here by the bar, there's nobody here. And then he waits a bit and goes, you know what I mean? And then later that night, we came home. He's listening to the recorder through his headphones, and he turns white as a ghost. I'm like, my gosh, what's wrong? What's wrong? And he's like, listen. So I, you know, put the headphones on, and, you know, I hear that space in the recording where he says, I figure there's nobody here, space, know what I mean? And we get a female voice, a class 1 EVP going, leave me alone. I was floored. Yeah, I'll send it to you. I should put it up on my website as well, because that's what shifted me from skepticism about electronic voice phenomena into being a firm believer. Then in my grad school program, I wrote some papers on it, and I was so surprised to discover that even the Catholic Church is a supporter of this phenomenon. And you know, I know that you've dove into this as well, you know, with your research.
You bring that up. Can you see that?
What's it's the breakthrough recording? What? Unexplained? Tell me what this is.
Breakthrough, an amazing experiment in electronic communication with the dead.
Oh,
this is a
my
record
goodness.
that was given out with a magazine to commemorate the release of the book Breakthrough, which was the first EVP book. I think it was 1956 or 8 or something like that, by Konstantin Radi, who was, I think, Czechoslovakian. Anyway, he started these experiments where he got these voices on these tapes out of radios and all this, and he didn't know what they're coming. And they started talking to him and answering him and saying things in 3 or 4 different
languages. Right. Yeah,
in one sentence. Anyway, a few weeks ago, I actually ordered this. It's a flexi disc.
Ooh.
That came with this little magazine in 1971 or something, and it's recordings of his EVPs that he talked about in the book he wrote about.
Now, didn't he? I think I remember reading about him when I was doing research in grad school, leaving his recording device out in the garden, and you know he'd be hearing all these nature sounds and all these birds, and then he'd hear like these breakthroughs of these voices just coming at him, and it was intelligent. It wasn't like picking up a stray radio broadcast. It was actual information. It was actual conversation.
Yeah, the Ghost Box did that too. I mean, we asked a question about, my friend was there and he said, who do you want to talk to tonight? He said, Greg or Ryan or Micah or Paul or Holly. And when he said Micah, the radio's just going, and everybody in the room distinctly heard Micah. And we're like,
wow.
So it could be, coincidence, but I think coincidence may be another word for synchronicity, depending on what's going on when it happens. You know what I mean? So,
that's right. That's right.
You know, I think that you know, it's, if you look at this thing not in a believer or skeptical mode, but outside of that, almost like a Zen no mind thing, I think it really helps to absorb the information and get some more, you know, it's more rich for me by doing it that way, by neither believing or not believing. And like you said, taking some things, you know, I will take some things as a fact, and other things I don't know yet. And, you know, and then some things are just, you know, total BS, and I just, you know, I just ignore them. But the things that are interesting to me, you know, they add to my experience and my knowledge, and things I can share with friends, and things I can write about, people that I can have on my show. So it's all, you know, I try not to filter too much. I just filter for interesting, you know.
So tell people where they can find you and where they can find your book, Weird California, and tell them about your other titles too, because you have a fascinating group of wonderful little truth nuggets to look at. The book we've been talking about is Weird California. I wrote about, 75% of that book. It's just weird places and weird history of California, haunted places, UFO sightings, all that, Bigfoot.
I've got a book called It Defies Language, which was a whole bunch of essays I wrote for a website, which is completely defunct now, that I wrote for 4 years, about 10 years ago starting. All kinds of subject, everything from like government conspiracy stuff to crop circles to, to stuff we're talking about here. Everything, weird science things. Anyway, that's another book. It's called, like I said, it's called It Defies Language. The book most people know me for is called Project Beta. It's about a guy that was a UFO researcher and the government found out what he was doing and basically told him stories, and he got more and more crazy till he eventually ended up in a mental institution. His family put him there, so it kind of ruined his life. So that's another book I've read. Anyway, I have a show.
We can send them to Radio Misterioso. Radio Misterioso.
Yeah, misterioso.com. If you look that up, that'll come up, and all the shows are archived there, and you can just go down the list and see all the people I've talked to. And it's mostly UFOs, but I did one with a spiritualist woman that does photography at spiritualist seances, and God, everything. I mean, I've talked to so many different people, remote viewers. So that's my show.
I'm excited to talk to you. And again, this was Greg Bishop, Weird California, Radio Misterioso. Speaking of radio, I got the high sign from my producer. We're about to sign out here. Well, guys, thank you so much. And thank you, Greg. Thank you, everybody, for who's tuning in and listening to this weird conversation. And gosh, do I love to have weird conversations. I want to, wish everyone a happy Halloween. And I guess we'll talk again sometime soon, Greg. All right. Thanks, everybody.